this peace. There was a time, surface level, this is how my life, when people would go on social media, this is what it looked like. But it was far from it. You know, I was bound to sin, um, you know, lust, the P word, man, you know what I'm talking about, selfishness, and, it took over my life, and it led to my biggest downfall. I ended up, you know, failing my wife. I was unfaithful. I failed my family, and basically everyone that was close to me, I ended up hurting. If you know me, the last thing that I ever wanted to do in my life was to bring hurt to anybody. And it's crazy because I ended up hurting the people, that I love the most, from my own brokenness. So long story short, after I'm exposed for my infidelity, I lose everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. And I felt so empty. I felt alone. I felt like, honestly, like I didn't want to live. And I grew up in the church. I've been a Christian basically my whole life. And, I love God my entire life. But it wasn't until, this time in my life, until I truly found out who God was, who Jesus Christ is. I remember one night, I was weeping. I kept thinking about the hurt and pain I caused my wife, my family, and I remember I surrendered. You know, my whole life, I always used to try to lean on my own understanding, try to fix things on my own, and God was showing me, like, no matter what I did, I had to put my trust in Him. So that night I surrendered. I threw my hands up. I felt so alone, and I can honestly say that in that moment when I threw my hands up, I felt like I felt God comforting me. All of a sudden the tears stopped, and I didn't feel alone anymore. From that night, my life changed forever, and that's where this video is coming from, because I can't hold back, how amazing God has been to me since that night. What He's revealed to me, just His love, His grace, His mercy, in my life. That I have to share it. Being separated from my family, was one of the toughest things that I had to endure. I didn't feel like a man. I felt as terrible as you can honestly feel, from all the pain and destruction I caused with what I did. And obviously, I got put out of my home, and it was, it was truly heartbreaking to me. But I can say, after me surrendering, after, God's grace, His mercy in my life, He provided me access back into my household. Now, when I say access to my household, not everything is perfect. There's still struggles, that come with me being reconciled with my family, my wife, and it's far from perfect. And I understand that because, from sin, especially when it's dealing with hurting someone else, there are consequences for your actions. But I just, through that and through this season, God is, He's bringing healing. And honestly, all I do is pray and I trust in him. But he granted me, that access back into my household, back into my home. And it was through his mercy, because a lot of men, they don't get those opportunities, to be united again with their wife and with their child. I have a beautiful daughter. And he gave that to me. Deliverance. Now, one of those sins that just had a stranglehold over my life was the P word, and you know what I'm talking about. From me being a teenager, I got addicted to it, sneaking to watch it, turned into an addiction. And it was a coping mechanism that I used to utilize, when I was depressed or I just needed an escape. And as I grew older, I felt as though, all the men do it. It's something that all men do, all people do, So, I hid it, and it was something in private that I did that I know now, was breaking God's heart the entire time. But let me tell you, after that encounter I had with him that night, from support from therapy, YouTube videos that I watched, shout out to Tim Ross and the Basement Crew, God delivered me from it. And coming up on a year where I haven't indulged and I have no desire to, what I thought was impossible in regards to that addiction, he delivered me from it. And I can't thank God enough for what he did. Again, his grace, his mercy, his love. I tried so many times to do it on my own by myself and got nowhere. But with him, he made it happen. God bless my family with so much support through this valley. And I caused it, from my actions, from my choices. There was so much disruption in my family's life. And God's mercy, his goodness, his favor, we had so much support from family, from friends, extended family. Like during this time, we joined an amazing church that has shown us so much love. They haven't judged us, especially me, because I was the one in the wrong. But they just extended so much love to my family and have supported us through this troublesome times. And there was so much that needed to be accomplished this past year with my family, and with me throwing everything off track with what I did. I didn't know how any of it was going to get done. But any need that my family has come across, God has provided. And I'm truly thankful, because like I said, I put our family in a tough spot, and God's grace, his love, his mercy, he's come through for us time and time again. I mean, so many blessings, and you'll probably find out more in depth in future videos, but it's so much that I can't even count and his goodness and what he's done, for my family. So, he blessed us with so much support during this time, I can't put it into words. So why join, or, what does this have to do with I am? It's a man thing. With the last point I just talked about in regards to support, God placed powerful men in my life during this valley. I want to say it again. God placed powerful, loving men in my life during this valley. And if it wasn't for God doing that, I don't know if I don't know if I would have made it. You know, uh, he surrounded me by, I mean, the dream team when it comes to a support system. You know, from mentors that I've had, from old friends, from new friends, church leadership. Let me touch on church leadership. A lot of churches talk about how amazing they are and how spirit filled, and but you know, the church that we're members of, they took the meaning of what I truly believe Jesus Christ intends for the church and how he loves the church. You know, when I say, from me being separated from my family, I was staying in hotels, I was staying in Airbnbs, you know, traveling, commuting, you know, traveling long distance, you know, to spend time with my daughter. And the pastor of our church, you know, he saw the hardships. And this man didn't know me from a can of paint. You know, he knew of my, you know, my infidelity, you know, and what happened with my family. But he didn't know me from a can of paint. And he saw, you know, everything that I was, you know, that my family was going through. And he opened his home to me, you know, so I wouldn't have to travel back and forth to be able to see my daughter, to be able to help with my family. And he didn't know me. He knew of the sin that I committed, and he didn't judge me. You know, he it was so godly, and it's something that honestly that I will never forget. You know, I love this man. I will, you know, I thank God for putting him in my life. And you know, that's to me, that's what church is truly about. You know, he saw me at my worst, and he didn't throw me to the wayside. You know, and God put it on his heart, and now we're connected for life. And I truly feel like this is the best church in the world. I definitely have bias with it, but um, what can I say? Uh, from, like I said, church leadership to my therapist, um, there's just so much that surrounded me by a community of men, um, that they poured into me when I felt like I didn't deserve anything. I felt like the scum of the earth. They didn't judge me. Um, they held me accountable now. Held me accountable. We had the tough conversations. They challenged me, you know. But through all that, they also prayed for me. They lifted me up. They checked on my family. They prayed for my wife. They prayed for my child. They prayed for us as a whole, you know. And from that, I just I wanted to be a part of something that would provide the same love, godly love that I was given to other men that are going through these struggles, going through these trials. So the journey to It's a Man thing. When I first joined my church, one of the first things my pastor did was ask me, you know, to assist him in putting together like a men's breakfast, a men's brunch, you know, something to galvanize the men, to bring us together. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, hold on, man, like you know about everything that just happened to me, happened, you know, with my family, what I did, the sin I committed, and you want me to bring men together? And he was like, yeah. And I just felt like I wasn't worthy, and but God saw right through that, and he saw right through it, and he pushed me, and he was like, yeah, I want you to, you know, I want you to put something together for us. And you know, I helped them with it. We got it up, and it was an amazing time. You know, we did a men's breakfast, and it was just so uplifting. We were at that restaurant for hours, just talking, just fellowshipping, and it just truly felt really good afterwards. So the next encounter I had with this fellowship group, I remember during this storm, during this valley in my life, it was, I mean, one of the worst days I had. And I was feeling, I mean, at the lowest of lows. And one of my mentors, I'm going to say his name because he's the founder of I Am, It's a Man Thing, Pastor Derenzer Johnson. I called him and I was venting to him and I was confiding in him. I was being vulnerable. And he sat back, he listened to everything that I had to say and get off my chest. And I remember at the end of the call, he said to me, he said, well, you know, Samuel, I thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to pray for you and I love you and you know, God's got you and I'm, you know, you're going to keep working. And, but I didn't, you know, honestly, for this call, I really was about to call you because I had to ask you something. And I'm like, okay, you know, what do you need? And he said he wanted me to assist him with starting a men's ministry. Again, at a day where I'm at the lowest of lows, I feel like the scum of the earth. You know, I'm just thinking about the pain. I'm thinking about all the hurt, the trauma, everything that I caused. And he asked me to help start a men's ministry. And it was like the Holy Spirit just, in that moment, told me, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to be a part of. This is what I want you to help start. And from my therapist, from my pastor, from my mentor, Pastor Derenzer Johnson, you know, they all told me, you know, that my testimony would be able to help so many men. And at that moment, I knew what God wanted me to do. Here we are, almost 7-8 months later from that from that conversation that I had with Pastor Johnson. And you know, we've started our journey with It's a Man Thing. We have monthly Zoom calls, you know, where we come together, we fellowship, different topics, you know, that we're talking about. We're checking in with each other. And you know, we just recently, you know, started our social media pages. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have a Facebook group, and here we are on YouTube. But I wanted to take the time to share my testimony with you all. This is a very difficult thing to do. I definitely didn't want to do it, but God makes us uncomfortable until we're obedient. And I pray that this testimony helps others. That's my true purpose in doing this. I'm not looking for anything in return because I'm just truly thankful for what God has done in my life, and I'm still a work in progress. This thing is going to take time because, like I said before, when you hurt others, there's consequences and there's healing that has to take place. And I'm just working with God, and I'm taking it a day at a time to try to be the best version of myself that I can be. But I just pray, you know, to all the other men out there, I hope you could join us on this journey. This community is needed. There's so much division, there's so much hurt, there's so much anger, man versus woman. You know, there's just so much going on. I feel like the enemy is truly busy. You know, yes, this is Christian based. You know, a part of the purpose of this is to drive men towards Christ, but it's also just to be in a listening ear, you know, to help you. You know, let's work together. Iron sharpens iron. You know, I'm doing this because just like I'm trying to help, you know, other men, you know, I still need help. I still need to be held accountable. You know, let's work together to become the best version of ourselves for our families, you know, for our children, you know, for our communities. And I just pray this finds you guys. You know, like I said, I don't know what's going to come from this. I'm just trying to be obedient. Work together to get this peace back, where our lives on Instagram, YouTube, whatever social media, TikTok, where, yeah, it looks like this on surface level, but inside it's also like this because God is within us. Let's work together to get this. We can do it, you know? Let's work together. I need y'all, and I hope that I can help others.